In the freezing glow of the emergency lights, when the world outside the shattered glass door seemed to blur into a smear of fear and chaos, the CEO, Ethan Vale, sat trembling on the marble floor of his own corporate lobby, whispering with a voice so weak it barely existed anymore, "Please, just make it fast," as if he had already accepted defeat. But everything changed the moment a single dad named Daniel Carter stepped forward, took off his worn-out jacket, and placed it gently around the shoulders of the man who had once seemed untouchable, and in that instant the entire room realized that sometimes the most powerful person is the one who chooses compassion when everyone else chooses fear. Friends, before the story truly begins, if you believe in kindness, second chances, and the idea that one small action can change an entire life, make sure to like, comment, share, and subscribe to the channel. And tell us in the comments where you're watching from, because today's story might just remind you that goodness can come from the most unexpected places. Daniel Carter had never imagined he would stand in the towering headquarters of Vale Industries. He was just a janitor, a single father trying to piece life back together after losing his wife in a tragic accident 2 years earlier, leaving him with a 5-year-old daughter, Lily, whose laughter could light an entire city and whose asthma kept Daniel in constant fear that every breath she took could be the one that struggled. They lived in a tiny apartment where Daniel worked nights, cleaned offices, and saved every coin he could to pay for her medicine, never once complaining, never asking for anything except the chance to keep going. But tonight, during his shift, everything spiraled into chaos when a desperate former employee stormed into the building with a weapon, demanding justice, demanding answers, demanding revenge from Ethan Vale, the billionaire CEO who had laid off hundreds during a brutal restructuring that cost the man his home and family. As the intruder screamed and threatened, employees hid behind desks, the security team froze in shock, and Ethan Vale, the powerful, polished man known for his ruthless decisions, sat cornered beneath the massive Christmas tree display, shaking like a terrified child, whispering, "Make it fast," as though he believed his life had already ended. Yet it was Daniel, the man nobody noticed, the man people walked past every day without a second glance, who stepped forward with a calmness that didn't match the chaos, his heart pounding but his resolve unshaken, knowing that if he didn't act, someone would die tonight. He walked slowly, softly, speaking not with power but with gentleness, sharing pieces of his own broken story, not to manipulate, but because he understood what desperation felt like, he understood what loss looked like, he understood the pain of watching everything slip through your fingers, and somehow, in that moment, the intruder's rage cracked open just enough for doubt to slip in, just enough for Daniel to continue talking, just enough for security to finally act and disarm him without bloodshed. When the danger finally passed and police escorted the intruder away, Ethan Vale was left sitting in the lobby staring at Daniel with an expression no one had ever seen on the man's face, raw, confused gratitude mixed with a shame he had spent years burying. Daniel simply gave a small nod, picked up his mop, and returned to his work as if nothing heroic had happened. But Ethan could not forget the moment Daniel's jacket settled on his shoulders, warm and human in a world that felt cold and mechanical. The next day, Ethan called Daniel into his office, a place filled with glass walls, city views, and silence that could swallow a man whole, and he asked Daniel to tell him about his life. For the first time in years, Ethan listened, truly listened, to someone beneath him on the corporate ladder, and as Daniel spoke about Lily, about late hospital visits, about cleaning floors at night while helping her with homework during the day, about the exhaustion that carved itself into his bones, Ethan felt a pang of something he hadn't felt in years, guilt mixed with responsibility, a realization that his decisions had consequences far beyond spreadsheets and board meetings. That afternoon, Ethan visited Daniel's apartment unannounced and was stunned by the simplicity, the hand-drawn pictures on the refrigerator, the tiny inhaler on the counter, the empty medicine bottle beside it. He watched Lily laugh, watched Daniel beam with love, and something inside him shifted, something deep and painful yet necessary, and he decided then that he would no longer be the man who watched suffering from a distance. Over the next weeks, Ethan arranged top-tier medical care for Lily, promoted Daniel to a supervisor role with a salary that changed everything, and began implementing new policies in the company that protected workers rather than discarding them. People whispered about the CEO who suddenly became human again, the man who walked the floors, talked to employees, and remembered their names. All because a single dad had stepped forward on a night when no one else would. But life has a way of testing people twice, and one late evening, as Daniel walked Lily home from school, she collapsed in his arms gasping for air, her asthma attack severe and sudden. Daniel trembled, holding her close, whispering reassurance through his tears as he rushed toward help, but traffic trapped him, panic surrounded him, and the world blurred like it had the night he lost his wife. Until a sleek black car screeched to a stop beside him and Ethan himself jumped out, lifting Lily into his arms and racing toward the hospital, refusing to let Daniel relive that pain again. Hours later, when Lily finally stabilized and breathed peacefully in her sleep, Daniel sat with his head in his hands, overwhelmed by everything that had happened, and Ethan placed a hand on his shoulder with a sincerity that needed no explanation. Sometimes family isn't chosen by blood but by the moments that break and remake us. And that night marked the beginning of an unspoken bond between a CEO and the single dad who saved him not once but twice. Over time, Ethan funded a community program named after Lily, dedicated to providing medical support to children from struggling families, and Daniel became its coordinator, helping hundreds of parents who felt the same fear he had endured. People who once walked past him now sought his guidance, and the man who once scrubbed floors now stood on stages sharing stories of resilience, kindness, and the power of stepping forward even when you feel small. And tonight, as you hear this story, if your heart felt even a flicker of warmth, pain, hope, or inspiration, please engage with this video. Your like, comment, and share help stories like these reach those who might need them the most, spreading kindness just a little further in a world that desperately needs it. Before we end, take one moment and comment something heartfelt, anything you feel right now, because your words might touch someone else in the comments who needs strength today. And as the lights fade on this story of a CEO transformed, a single dad uplifted, and a child whose breath brought two men together in the most unexpected way, remember this: sometimes heroes don't wear capes, sometimes they simply take off their jacket and step forward when it matters most.